Hello and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Sarah.
And I'm Ben.
Thank you for joining us today. How are you doing on this weekend, Ben?
I'm doing all right. It's like nice outside. It's cooled down here in Calgary, but it's not like freezing cold. The sun's out. So it's like a nice, mild sort of summer weekend, which is really nice.
We've turned from the heat of summer into the gradual coolness of autumn.
I wish I could say I was doing like better mental health wise.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But, you know, I'm okay. It's just I've been very busy at work and I think my brain's just playing mean tricks on me.
As it likes to do.
Yeah. The rejection sensitivity is an issue that I struggle with a lot. So, you know, as always, I am happy for the opportunity to sit around and watch a cool movie and talk about it with you. How are you doing, Sarah?
I am doing all right. You said that this is a cool movie. Have you seen it before?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I was just sort of defining any movie I get to watch with you as cool, I suppose.
And yet, we have watched some movies recently that have not been cool, that have been a little bit of a trial. Well, without further ado, what are we watching today, Ben?
Today, Sarah, we are watching Diary of a Madman from 1963, directed by our old friend, Reginald LeBorg.
I thought he would have retired by now.
Nope. He needs money, Sarah.
Don't we all?
He got a divorce. He has a daughter he needs to pay for her college. He needs money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at this movie, it's very apparent immediately what it is. So this is an Edward Small production, and I think that's very revealing of what's going on with this movie. We talked about Edward Small fairly recently. He had teamed with Roger Corman on Tower of London, and the intent there was that it would be the first of like a number of projects of him and Roger Corman working together. However, Small and Corman butted heads on that movie and agreed to go their separate ways. And that left Small with like plans to do a bunch of Roger Corman movies, but with no Roger Corman, essentially. So here we have Small producing a period horror movie based on a short story from the 19th century starring Vincent Price.
Ah, I see.
Yes. Hardly a coincidence. But even though it's not like AIP and Corman had like the rights to Edgar Allan Poe, a public domain, entity, we're not getting an Edgar Allan Poe short story this time. We're getting a French story being adapted here, I believe.
Yes, this is by an author who is known as Guy de Maupassant, but he was born Henri René Albert Guy de Maupassant.
Okay, so I mean, Guy de Maupassant fits on the like cover of a book, I think, a lot easier than the longer version.
No, you just need to use smaller font. So as you said, Maupassant, it was a French writer. He was born in 1850 and he died that same century in 1893.
Okay, so like not a long life.
Yeah. But he was very prolific. He wrote about 300 short stories, 6 novels, 3 travelogues, and 1 volume of verse.
Wow. So, making the most of his time.
Absolutely. So a little bit about who Guy was. When he was 11 years old, his mother legally separated from her husband, which is like very impressive in those days.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like you need balls to do that.
Yeah. Difficult legally to achieve.
Yes.
Especially in a Catholic country.
Yes. She retained custody of Guy and his younger brother, Hervé, and strongly encouraged them both to read classical literature. He volunteered to serve in the French army when the Franco-Prussian War began. This would have been July 1870, so when he was 20 years old. That war lasted until January 1871, so not a long war, but his experiences definitely left a strong mark when it comes to the themes that he explores in his literature, in his writings. Now, he had met the French novelist Gustave Flaubert back when Maupassant was in junior high school, and Flaubert continued to kind of foster a mentorship with Maupassant and encouraged his interest in writing after the war. Now, Flaubert is a big name in and of himself. Of his works, the one I think that you will be most familiar with is Madame Bovary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in 1857 is when that was published. He focused on literary realism and extended that focus in the way that he encouraged Maupassant. So that's kind of the tradition that Maupassant is being brought up into.
Okay.
Now, Maupassant's debut short story is Beurre de Suif, aka like Little Dumpling. It's also like Butterball, basically like something like that. And it was a huge hit. It was popular at home. It was popular abroad. And it's been adapted in like Hollywood several times. It was adapted into the movie Shanghai Express in 1932.
Oh.
A little bit of that short story, as well as another short story titled Mademoiselle Fifi, gets adapted by our good friend Val Lewton back in like the 40s. So Maupassant is like a big deal. If you aren't familiar with his stuff, chances are the people you are familiar with his stuff.
Sure.
Now, his debut short story was collected amongst other short stories that all kind of have this focus on civilian experiences during the Franco-Prussian War.
Okay.
And how the civilians' pessimistic or disillusioned lives are kind of controlled by these outside forces. And that kind of approach to talking about people's lives is ongoing throughout his work.
Okay.
Now, that short story and that collection was published in 1880, and he had a period of very successful outputs up to 1891. However, he did lose his mentor, Flaubert, in 1880. He passed away. So literary realism continued to be Maupassant's foundation, almost to a level of someone's environment being kind of a deterministic impact on why that person's human nature is the way it is.
Got it.
Of course, he does eventually get other mentors and other influences. For example, Honoré de Balzac. So Maupassant manages to find ways to bounce between the literary realism that he was kind of brought up in and kind of a speculative, supernatural approach to fiction. Fantasy is kind of a good word, but I don't mean fantasy as in like, these are the days of high adventure.
Yeah, not
like,
high fantasy.
Yeah. Just like speculative fiction.
Mm-hmm.
There might be supernatural or magical elements going on here.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that like while supernatural stuff does come up in some of Maupassant's materials, he was also very interested in psychology, and often that supernatural element becomes somehow tied back to the person's real psychology, whether it's how they understand the supernatural thing going on or a very realistic approach to engaging with that supernatural element.
Sure.
So today's film, Diary of a Madman, adapts a short story published in 1887 called The Horla, Horla. That's not really a word. I'll explain what it means in a minute. But I thought it was interesting that, that short story was published in 1887. But we have other short stories that use that phrase of like Diary of a Madman, Story of a Madman, whatever, in other things in Maupassant's lifetime.
Oh, okay.
So in 1835, we get the short story Diary of a Madman from Nikolai Gogol, also kind of a big deal.
Yes.
This Russian short story is first person, and it's about this civil servant's descent into insanity. It is really interesting. It uses a journal or diary format in a very interesting way. There's no relation between that in terms of like what happens in the short stories, there's no relation between Gogol's short story and this one. But Maupassant's mentor, Flaubert, published an autobiographical text in 1838 called Memoirs of a Madman. Because it's autobiographical, it does take some like, you know, philosophical approaches to talking about like life and death and things like that. It feels more of a like riff off of Gogol's title.
Sure.
And again, its content has nothing to do with what happens in the Horla. But I think it's good to just be like, hey, these things exist over here. So the Horla, as I said, it's not really a real word in French. It's believed to be like a portmanteau of the French words la, so there, like, or the, and hos, which is outside. So it basically is like a rough translation of like the one out there.
Got it.
Not necessarily just the outsider, but like literally the being that is separate out there.
Got it. The thing from another world.
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah.
No aliens here, though. So the plot of this short story is it follows this single upper-class man. He's just living his life, and he sees this very impressive Brazilian ship sailing past him, and he absentmindedly waves at it, as you do. But it's been 4 days since that incident, and he has known no peace since then. There seems to be a supernatural presence that is haunting him, causing him night terrors and nightmares. Seems to be like feeding off of his own energy. He seems to be having lapses of time because he'll have like a glass of water near him and be like, wait a second, I didn't drink any of that water and yet that glass is empty. What is going on? He begins to worry that he's going mad, but then believes that surely I can't actually be going insane because I'm aware of how strange these happenings are going on. I'm not like, I'm aware that I'm thinking these strange things and having these weird experiences. So therefore, I can't actually be going insane. And then he reads about a type of Brazilian vampire. He reads about this Brazilian village where everyone kind of like left all of a sudden because they felt that they were being pursued and possessed by this strange vampire that happens to drink water, hence the empty water glasses. And he believes that he must have invited this Horla, this being, to his home by waving at this Brazilian ship. He tries to destroy the Horla by trapping it in his house and then burning the house down, but unfortunately, he forgets that his servants are in there and they burn to death.
Oof.
And the Horla is still around. It's still haunting him. And with that pursuit continuing, the narrator decides that suicide is his only escape. And that's how it ends.
Oh. Huh.
Now, the short story is fairly well known for Maupassant's output within like his bibliography. And it's said that it likely influenced Lovecraft with the like Call of Cthulhu, the idea of this being influencing people's minds and dreams. Lovecraft has writes about how he's read this author.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. It has also been suggested that this short story was an influence on Mario Bava's Black Sabbath, which comes later this year. I can't say whether that's if that's the case or not. I guess we'll see when we cover that movie. And the Horla short story has been adapted a few times into film and radio productions. It was adapted in 1914 in the Russian film The Terrible Night by director Yevgeny Bauer, which makes sense. There's a strong like cultural tie between France and Russia, so a lot of back and forth between them. There was several radio programs that adapted the short story through the 40s in the United States. There was a program called The Weird Circle through the 40s that adapted it. Inner Sanctum Mysteries in 1943 adapted it. And Peter Lorre's Mystery in the Air serial adapted it in 1947. We have this adaptation in 1963 for Diary of a Madman. And then we get a French film adaptation of La Horla in 1966 by director Jean-Daniel Paulet. And then people have also pointed to the 1967 Star Trek episode Wolf in the Fold by Robert Bloch, of the idea of like this supernatural being infiltrating you and causing you harm.
Yeah.
But as we've talked about in previous episodes with Robert Bloch, namely, I think we talk about it explicitly in Psycho, Bloch has used this plot device of specifically Jack the Ripper possessing someone many times in his own work since 1943.
Yes, true.
So some of this could just be people making connections because of like vague similarities. It's not the most original idea of like, oh, you've accidentally invited something in and now it's possessing you to do things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And you try to destroy it.
It's a pretty basic like ghost plot, you know?
Now, as for Maupassant, as I said, he was prolific through the 1880s, but throughout that time, he became increasingly introverted, seeking solitude, fearing others, and very paranoid that he was being watched and pursued by something. All caused by syphilis.
Oh.
Yeah. He had syphilis in his youth. It is theorized that his younger brother also had it, so then it's also theorized that it was potentially congenital, which means he's had it his entire life. In any case, in January 1892, he attempted suicide, but failed, and was committed to a private asylum, and ultimately passed away in July 1893 from syphilis at age 42.
That's tragic.
Yeah. But as you said, he was very busy when he was alive. He was very prolific. He was getting his stuff out. It's just unfortunate how his life ended.
All right. Well, thank you for that overview. I think it's clear, why this story was picked, why this was sort of the direction they went in for this movie. It's very much Edgar Allan Poe without doing Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Right? With his Bridges Burned with Roger Corman, Edward Small turned to veteran director Reginald LeBorg to direct the picture. It's been a while since we've seen LeBorg, but he directed Calling Dr. Death, Jungle Woman, The Mummy's Ghost, Weird Woman, The Black Sleep, Voodoo Island, along with many, many other B-movie programmers through his long career. Now, after Voodoo Island, he kind of wanted to escape his identification with horror pictures.
What year was that?
58.
Okay.
He had kind of done a lot of horror for Universal in the 40s and then went to do other stuff in the 50s, but had found himself directing horror movies again with like The Black Sleep and Voodoo Island in the mid-50s. And he was like, I don't want to get typecast with that. So he went and directed 2 Westerns in the late 50s, including The Dalton Girls in 1957, considered an early feminist Western. However, these Westerns did very poorly at the box office, and LeBorg did not get another directing job until Small offered him the science fiction film The Flight That Disappeared in 1961. So he went several years without work there. The small success of that film.
Is that a pun on the guy's name?
No, it just, it was
a minor success.
A minor success. The minor success of that film led to other films working with Small, which then led to doing Diary of a Madman, which had a larger budget. The budget here is $350,000, which is honestly one of the largest for LeBorg's career. And it does have sets by Roger Corman's production designer, Daniel Haller. The rest of the crew for this film consists of a lot of old hands of Smalls. Robert Kent, who penned 1956's The Werewolf, has written the script here. Ellis Carter is the cinematographer. He shot 1960's The Leech Woman. Grant Wytock is the editor here. He had edited Curse of the Faceless Man. Richard LaSalle does the score. He scored Hands of a Stranger, etc. LeBorg himself was familiar with the original short story and happy to adapt it. And he also enjoyed working with Vincent Price, who apparently took LeBorg's direction very well.
Yeah, he's a professional.
Well, LeBorg wanted to tone down Price's performance and kind of restrain his tendency to overact.
That's fair. I feel like Price has gotten to get a little overabundant with what he does because Corman just lets him go.
Yeah. So LeBorg was looking to like rein that in. And he was surprised to find that like all he needed to do was like apparently just give Price some simple hand gestures to like, tone it down basically. And like Price just did it. Like all you needed to do was tell him basically. And so this film is actually considered one of Price's more subdued roles.
Okay.
Actress Nancy Kovack plays the lead female role in this film. She was near the beginning of her career at this time. She was born in Flint, Michigan in 1936, and she had a very high IQ, so she graduated from the University of Michigan at age 19. She became a model and began appearing on television in 1958, breaking into film in 1960. The same year as Diary of a Madman, she played Medea in Jason and the Argonauts. And in 1968, she played the femme fatale Nona in the original Star Trek episode A Private Little War. That's the one where McCoy gets attacked by the big white ape and they need to like save his life. And so Kirk goes to this like woman who knows like the herbal remedies, and she's the like wife of his old friend. And the Klingons are there selling rifles to the other side. And so Kirk has to sell rifles to his side, and it's all kind of a Vietnam War allegory.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 1969, Kovack married, and she retired to focus on her family. And she is still alive. She's 90 years old.
Oh, wow. Good for her.
Another actress in the cast, Elaine DeVry, is almost more known for her marriages than her performances.
Not her college?
No.
DeVry College?
She was born Thelma Elaine Mankin in 1930. She began modeling at age 15, and she married her high school boyfriend, Dan Dukic, at age 18. In 1949, he was convicted of multiple robberies in LA, and they divorced in 1952. She married actor Mickey Rooney later that year.
Dang.
Yeah.
Leveled up.
And she appeared with him in 1954's The Atomic Kid, billed as Elaine Davis. She realized after about 5 years of marriage that she didn't actually love Rooney. She was still in love with her first husband, but she was really shy and had a hard time like turning down the lifestyle and affection that she got from Rooney. But eventually they divorced in 1958. She married actor Will J. White next, and they stayed together until his death in 1999, which is about when she retired from acting. And then she passed away in 2023 at age 93.
Wow.
The cast includes 2 more original Star Trek alums. Ian Wolfe is my favorite flustered old man actor. He was born in 1896. He was a classically trained stage actor before beginning his film career. We've seen him many times before. He was in Mad Love, Return of Dr. X, Bedlam. Some of my favorite non-horror performances from him include Julius Caesar, THX 1138. His last role was in the 1990 Dick Tracy movie. And of course, his 2 Star Trek appearances, Septimus in Bread and Circuses, that's the Roman planet episode, and Mr. Atoz in All Our Yesterdays, that's the holographic librarian.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And Ian Wolfe passed away in 1992 at age 95. Then we have character actor Joseph Ruskin, who appeared as Galt in the Gamesters of Triskelion, kind of the ref of the like fights in that episode. He was also the Klingon Tumek in The House of Quark and Looking for Parmach in All the Wrong Places. He's also Odo's mysterious Cardassian informant in Improbable Cause. He played a Sona in Star Trek Insurrection, the movie. He's a Vulcan master in Gravity, which is an episode of Voyager, and he played a Suliban doctor in Broken Bow, the first episode of Star Trek Enterprise.
So almost every single one of like the original.
Yeah, he's in every Star Trek series of like the classic era except Next Generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Insurrection is
a next gen movie, that's true. So he's worked with every cast of the like original Star Trek sort of suite of series.
Really giving Jeffrey Combs a run for his money.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, Ruskin was the subject of a dispute between LeBorg and Small in this film over the voice of the Horla. LeBorg tested multiple actors trying to find the right voice for this disembodied spirit, but Small wanted like a raspy voice, and so it was Small who cast Ruskin as the voice of the Horla over LeBorg's objections.
And Horla, not Horta from
Right.
Star Trek, the lava monster thing.
Yes, exactly. Good disambiguation there. So this film was shot in 2 weeks and released on March 6th, 1963 in the United States by United Artists. Now, while Price and Kovack received praise for their performances, the film overall was received poorly, with the voice of the Horla being called out in the New York Times as sounding like something between the voiceover of a toothpaste commercial and a repressed giggle. So
Okay.
I guess LeBorg was right and Small was wrong. The other thing that was criticized was the writing. The movie is just not considered to be very good.
Great. I am excited to see this because of like Price and then all these like Star Trek alums. I think it'll be interesting.
All right.
Yeah. How are we watching this?
Sarah, this film is available on Blu-ray from Scream Factory's Vincent Price Collection, Volume 3.
Okay. Well, if it is bad, at least it's in a collection of other really good movies. And hopefully you can find a copy to watch along. You are going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we will discuss Diary of a Madman from 1963, directed by Reginald LeBorg.
See you on the other side, everybody. Welcome back to Scream Scene, everybody. We just finished watching Diary of a Madman, starring Vincent Price and directed by Reginald LeBorg. Sarah, what did you think of this movie?
It was fine. It commits one of the sins of bad horror movies, which is that it's boring.
Yeah.
It has one pretty good scene for sure, but a lot of this is a little boring.
Yeah, I would say I found this movie to be very tiresome.
Yeah. As we watched, a very intense thunderstorm started outside that went on for like the last 30 or so minutes of the movie. And there were times where I caught myself watching the lightning strikes instead of the movie.
Yeah.
So, the plot is a bit long that I have to go through because it just kind of keeps going.
Yeah, it's very unnecessarily complicated
Yeah.
to get at very simplistic results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in any case, the film opens on the funeral of a magistrate who's named Simon Cordier, and a group at the funeral is invited to a little soiree afterwards to hear not the last will and testament, but rather a letter with a mysterious chest that was written and prepared the night he died. Now, this group includes a Catholic priest, Simon's 2 servants, a police captain who is also a friend of Simon, and the father and daughter owners of a local art gallery who make it clear that they are not sorry that Simon has died. Now, the letter is like, I prepared this chest on the night that I died, and if you're reading it, that means I've died. And inside the chest is a diary. And so we get to hear from Simon himself, his story, and the battle of wills with the Horla, an invisible corporeal being that feeds on hate and can take total control over people, and calls itself a Horla, as if that's its species.
Yes.
So Simon, he's a magistrate, think like a judge, basically. And he had been interviewing a prisoner because he's trying to understand the criminal mind. Probably important to mention, we're set in like Victorian times.
It's the 1880s. I think it's the same year the story came out.
Yeah.
Is the year they give.
But in Paris.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Simon is interviewing this prisoner who insisted that he did not do the murders, that he didn't realize what was happening. The blood of my victims was found on my hands, but I had no memory of doing this. I had no will to do this. In fact, these were like random murders. He didn't know these people beforehand. And as the prisoner is explaining this to Simon, he suddenly gets angry and attacks Simon. And in self-defense, Simon pushes him back and the prisoner dies. Now, before the prisoner gets mad, we see this interesting like lighting technique over his eyes where it's like this green visor kind of appears. And this green lighting is clearly done like on set, not in like post-production. We come to learn that this is a visual technique to show when the Horla is taking control. Now that the prisoner has died, seemingly this Horla has now attached itself to Simon. He explains that he started having these bad dreams. Items seem to be moved through the house that he and his servants have not touched, and he starts to hear a particular voice. He goes to a psychologist, and the psychologist tells Simon to take a few days off work and basically return to his hobbies.
Do some self-care.
Have a life outside of work. There's no real easy way to put this in the plot synopsis, but we do learn that about 12 years ago, Simon's wife died from suicide, kind of after he blamed her for the death of their young son, the boy.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of specifics about this, but it's clearly like a guilt or shame that's been like hanging over Simon's head for the last dozen years.
Mm-hmm. I just like that the boy does not get a name.
No, and he's always referred to as the boy.
Or my son.
Yeah.
So the psychologist is like, you dedicated yourself only to work after the death of your wife, so it's time to get back to your hobbies. Simon had been an amateur sculptor, so he decides, okay, let me try to get back into sculpting, get back into the art world. And as he looks at this gallery that has this new exhibit from this local painter out, he meets the model of the paintings, Odette, and invites her to sit with him. And thus begins the melodrama of Odette, her husband, Paul, and the art gallery owners, including the daughter who loves Paul, and Simon as well, all wrapped up in here.
Mm-hmm.
Because Simon...
Paul's the artist.
Yeah, Paul's the artist. Simon falls in love with Odette. Odette is married to Paul. Paul loves Odette. Odette, I think she cares for Simon, but she in particular is like, oh, but this is like a stable house with food and money to buy myself things like nice dresses. And Paul kind of likens it to her being a bit of a gold digger, but I don't think it's necessarily like a cut and dry portrayal of her as that.
Yeah, the Horla tries to paint her as being like vain because she just wants to like trade up to a better lifestyle. But like really it's more like that Florence Pugh speech from Little Women where
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, you said that the Horla paints her. Paul paints her. And Simon sculpts her.
I see. Yes, that's fair. The Horla speaks her as being vain.
Basically, because of that, I'll say guilt tripping or like trying to portray Odette as being a gold digger, essentially, the Horla is trying to convince Simon to kill Odette and basically takes him over, and he goes and kills Odette. And that's the one good scene of the movie, him stalking her and then killing her in her apartment. They plan to like escape to Switzerland. Escape's a strong word. Elope to Switzerland. And so the serpents are sent on ahead to Switzerland. And Paul goes to Odette to be like, baby, come on, we can patch this up. Like, why are you doing this to me? And she's like, no, go away. And they have a fight. He gets a little physical, but he leaves. And then that's when the Horla-controlled Simon appears. And he's wearing like this black pea coat almost, this white ascot and this black fedora, and is holding this like very long knife, stabby knife, and attacks Odette and kills her.
Yeah, he psychos her to death.
Yeah. And so the next morning, dude has no memory of this, and he gets the morning paper, and he's shocked to see that, oh no, a headless body identified as Odette.
How did they manage that?
Has been found in her apartment. Yeah, I don't know how they identified a body without a head, like especially that quickly.
Yeah,
Come on. And that's when Simon starts to go like, oh, what? And then sees a blood trail leading up to his studio. And then dun, 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 Odette's head has been encased in the clay sculpture he made. Fun.
Yeah, this is cool. This is good. You think at this point that the movie is going to finally like kick it into high gear, which is really good because at this point you are over halfway through the movie.
I'm pretty sure it's at an hour. And it's an hour 30.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Paul is arrested for the crime. Makes sense. He's the husband, soon to be ex-husband, who neighbors heard yelling coming from the room. And he and the gallery owners tried to appeal to Simon about helping, but Simon claims to not know them or Odette. It's kind of unclear if this is Simon. Like, Simon is aware that, like, yeah, he must have killed Odette because of Horla's influence, but the Horla keeps like taking control of him. So it's unclear if when Simon is interacting with these people, if the Horla has taken control and is having him lie, or if Simon's just lying.
Yeah, or if like somehow the Horla's like blocking his memories or something, and in those moments he doesn't remember, but he remembers in other moments.
Yeah. Now the gallery owner daughter, the girl, she says, you know what? No, fuck this. I'm going to go to police because you're acting sketchy by saying that you don't remember who this person was. Like, you don't remember Odette, despite planning on marrying her. And if I can get you involved, then potentially Paul won't get guillotined. So she's like, no, I'm going to the police. And so Horla-controlled Simon stalks her down the streets and is about to kill her when he is stopped by the sight of a crucifix that interrupts his attempted murder. He is delayed, and his priest friend pops out, bumps into him in the street. And Simon's like, oh, my priest friend, please, you have to help me. Like, take me to your church. This seems to be like the only way for me to escape. And so then the Horla, who is not just like an ethereal thing, like I said, he's corporeal, he hijacks a carriage down the street and tries to run the two of them, Simon and priest, over. So Simon's like, oh shit, okay, no, I'm putting the priest in danger if I stay with him. He sends the priest away, and Simon heads back to his house to kind of take matters into his own hands. And this is when he prepares the diary, put into the chest with the letter that's like, open upon my death, gives it to the priest and the gallery girl, and then he traps himself inside his study, waiting for the Horla to appear. And once the Horla does appear, he burns the house down. The Horla gets destroyed, and Simon's like, great, now to try to escape. So I'm not committing suicide. But due to complications of it's a fucking fire, he does not escape and he dies. Hence, we have now caught up to the beginning, and briefly our group here kind of talks about, like, is this true? Is this, like, what would be the nature of the Horla? What would be the nature of God? What is the nature of evil and hatred? For, like, 5 minutes or less. And then we wrap it up. And it's over. It's the end.
Yeah, they kind of go like, okay, well, this diary definitely proves that Paul didn't kill Odette. So he's cleared of that.
Oh, yeah, the police captain's like, yeah, no, I'll make sure Paul's freed.
Yeah.
And it's like, you technically, this is all hearsay. Like, I don't think you can just,
you have a written confession, sort of, from a man who, another person raises the point like, oh, okay, so reading this, we can all agree that Simon was crazy, right? So he has a signed confession from a madman. But then the priest of all people is like, no, the Horla's definitely real. And in fact, so long as men are evil, that's a sign that Horla are still around.
And hate, because the Horla feed on hatred.
Yes, which suggests that like all evil acts are the result of Horla, which is really troubling if you think about that too long, because it kind of absolves any people of any wrongdoing. Anyways,
so that's the movie. Is there anything that you think I missed?
Nah, I mean, you did a pretty good job of summarizing like a little bit of a convoluted plot.
There are so many characters.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't care enough to name the two servants, but boy, do they get a lot to say to each other. The gallery father and daughter team, who I probably could have named the daughter, but
I have a very small amount of good things to say about this movie, and then I have a very long rant about what I don't like about this movie.
Okay, well, tell me what you did like.
So I think the production design is great. Mm-hmm. We've got fantastic use of color, which, by the way, this is a color film. Sarah mentioned the like green lighting across the eyes. I was really surprised to find that this was in color, but I guess Edward Small learned his lesson after Tower of London.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the costumes.
Yes, I think the costumes and the sets are very good. It's very clear that like this was a, on the grand scheme of things, larger budgeted movie than the average Reginald LeBorg film. Mm-hmm. We've got like multiple interior sets, multiple exterior sets. I think there's good lighting.
Yeah. I'm a slut for like fancy key lighting like that. The fact that there are already so many Star Trek connections definitely had me thinking about Star Trek with this type of lighting.
Yeah, it's really lit like that, isn't it? The stalking scenes for the two times that he's like controlled by the Horla and is in like murderer mode, those are lit really, really well.
And I think Price does a great job.
He looks great.
Because he also has to portray it as like he's kind of in a daze, but also determined.
Yeah.
And I think he does a really good job. It's really fun to see him in that kind of menacing look.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And I think there's some effective horror visuals here. The murder scene, as I joked, is really clearly like a post-Psycho murder scene.
Yeah.
It's like he stabs Odette a ton of times with like a butcher knife, and we get some blood.
And the cuts of what we're seeing are timed with when he's stabbing her, which is exactly the way it's cut in Psycho. So it's interesting that we get to see it in color. I think the fact that it's in color and we see some of the blood makes it feel like it has a lot of impact, whereas I think in Psycho the impact comes from the editing and the music in particular.
Yeah. Now, of course, it's worth pointing out that the blood in this movie is like has the redness of like American Heinz ketchup or like red like acrylic paint.
Truly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is like a pretty typical thing around this era for blood in film. It's largely done that way because basically like censorship boards were more lenient the less realistic the blood looked. But I think the like whole thing with her severed head in the bust is like really cool. That's like a neat visual, good horror stuff there.
Yeah, he like pulls off part of the clay and it's just over her eye and it's like frozen wide open. It was interesting coming from a Giallo movie, like the first Giallo movie, to this because Price is in that Giallo getup, right?
Yes.
He has black gloves on and we get to see who the murderer is. There's gore and the gore is fucking bright red.
Yes.
Not that this, I think, is having any conversation with Giallo, but it's just interesting timing for us.
I think if there's a conversation at all, it might be the filmmakers realizing that, we're in a post-Psycho world. These Italian movies have been coming out that like are pushing the envelope with the violence. And this movie doesn't feel like a movie in all other respects other than this one violent scene and the beheading. This movie is very, very tame and very, very old-fashioned.
Yeah.
And so it feels like a conscious attempt by some older filmmakers to like keep up with the times, basically.
Yeah, you can just say Edward Small didn't know what he was doing, and Reginald LeBorg and other folks on set were trying to like do something with that scene.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the Horla voice at the beginning. I think it was fine. Like, I think the voice itself was fine, and I think the performance of the voice worked. But I think the Horla itself is just not that threatening of a presence.
It doesn't work.
Because, like, he's invisible. We get to see a bit of his shape when he, like, burns up. But otherwise, it's just like, ooh, spooky things moving, or big whooshy wind through a door opening. Like, it's just, as you said, it feels very old-fashioned.
The Horla is like Gandalf in The Hobbit, in that like he's constantly leaving to go do something else that we don't know about, and then coming back into the house, because the way that they signal whether he's in the scene or not is like the French doors, like to the patio, like swinging open or closed.
Well, we're in Paris, so I think you can just call them doors.
That's so fair. Did you have anything that you wanted to like call out specifically before I go into a long rant about why I think this script is terrible?
I did want to say that, like, the Horla's motivations make no fucking sense.
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay. Well, what I'll say is, like, very small then, like, in relation to, I'm sure, what you have to say, because you go into a lot of depth. But the Horla, the way he was controlling that prisoner, it was like random killings. He had no connection to who these people were. There was no like knowledge of who that person was. It was just suddenly like, urge to kill. You're right next to me. But with Simon, it's like the Horla's toying with him. And it's like, maybe you could make the case that the Horla is like, well, this guy took my prisoner away from me, but dude was going to get executed anyways. Like, the shift in motivations on the part of the Horla do not make sense. And I think the fact that the Horla's motivations are said to be just so simple, as in, like, I feed on hatred and I want you to do evil things. Like, there are so many ways that they could have made that way more menacing. Like, I'm thinking of the black tar monster in TNG that kills what's-her-face, Blondie.
Yep, Tasha Yar.
That fucking...
Armis is the name of the monster too, so that you aren't yelling at your podcatcher.
That fucking terrified me as a child. And that's like an embodiment of evil. Mm-hmm. So I think that there are ways to capture embodiment of evil and terrifying that they just fall flat here.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. This movie's script has a lot of problems, and one of the biggest is that the writer doesn't know what the Horla is. Yeah. Like can't decide. The writing is bad. I think the performances, just so I don't like, the performances are good. I think
for the most part.
I think Novak is really good as Odette. I think Price is doing a really good job here. But the writing is bad, and the script is a major problem. And it's not really the dialogue that's bad. Like, it's not that. It's really the plotting that's at fault. One of the things that I'm curious about is at the start of the movie, we get the credit based on stories by Guy de Maupassant. And my assumption is that maybe they pulled a lot of these characters and situations from some other story, because the only resemblance to the Horla short story is that he has two servants and that he burns his house down with the Horla inside. And that's it.
Yeah.
The Horla itself is totally different. In fact, the movie gives him the two servants. Well, okay, I'll get into that later. Basically, my point in bringing this up is I wonder which stories it drew from and how much doing that affected the story and the plotting.
Because, like, a lot of his other stuff tends to be realistic fiction, and I think that if they were adapting stories that were in that mold, that kind of bogged down the movie into feeling a little too melodramatic and too old-fashioned.
I totally agree. Everything in this movie happens at a snail's pace, to the extent that you would be forgiven for thinking that this is just like a period romantic melodrama for like long stretches. It's so extremely reluctant to engage with its own premise that all of the like horror scenes, which are basically just the scenes where the Horla talks to him and the scenes where he kills or tries to kill someone, those scenes feel very divorced from the rest of the movie. Like you could cut those scenes out and you would still mostly have a working romantic melodrama.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where to start with how much this movie fails in its depiction of the Horla. Maybe the best thing to do is to remind listeners what the Horla is in the short story, because in the short story, the Horla is invisible and I think is supposed to be incorporeal too, but I think that's not really clear. Stuff moves around in the house, so it clearly can interact with matter. But what the Horla is doing in the story is it's basically like a ghost vampire, and it feeds on the protagonist's life force while he's asleep, and it's feeding off of him. And the theme of like the unintentional murders because of the Horla comes from him burning the house down and forgetting that his 2 servants are inside, and he's accidentally killed them, and then he kills himself. Kind of in response to that. He hopes that he destroyed the Horla, but he doesn't know for sure. One of the key, I think, sources of tension and ambiguity in the short story, one of the key sources of horror in the short story, is that he doesn't really know if there's a Horla or if he's just nuts.
Yeah, because Horla is literally, it's not like a noun.
Yeah.
Or it's more like a descriptor. It's this like overwhelming, like fearsome force.
It's the other,
Yeah.
right? Like it basically just means the other. And like there's like this theme of like doppelganger in the original short story because of that. And it's also something where like he's just pulling associations out of the air like he's Adam West Batman. Like it's like, oh, this weird stuff's been happening in my house. Well, it started after I waved to that Brazilian ship. Well, there's this legend in Brazil about this strange creature. Maybe that's what this is. Like he's kind of like going down like a paranoid sort of spiral. And that's like a key part of the horror is he doesn't know what's real or not. This movie insists on the definitive physical reality of the Horla, despite it being invisible. We are shown over and over and over again that it can interact directly physically with the world. We're even shown that its invisibility has a very weird property because if
he can block the view of Vincent Price's reflection, but it's not like distorted. It just shows up as he doesn't have a reflection.
Yeah. Like if Corjay is looking in the mirror and the Horla stands in front of him, it looks like there's no Cordier in the mirror because he's standing in front of him and he's invisible, which is like, guys, that's not how light works. That's not how invisibility works. That's not how reflections work. That's not how sight works. But okay. But as you said, I think the bigger problem here is that it's unclear what the Horla even wants.
Yeah.
As we said, you know, in the short story, it feeds on life force like a vampire. And here it feeds on like evil or hatred. And if that's the case, why does it select Cordier? This question comes up in the movie, and the answer the movie gives is that it was attracted to him because his emotional abuse led to the death of his wife 12 years ago, which like
that's a long time.
Yeah, like I'm sure there were more actively hateful people in the jail that you could have like swapped to. And then once it's sort of attached to him, it's not really feeding on his hatred because Cordier doesn't have a lot of hatred. In fact, he has none. Cordier as a magistrate is like totally lawful good. Like he's always here for justice. You know, you get the sense that he's incorruptible almost. Whereas like if Cordier was kind of like, you know, oh, I'm a good person, but kind of, you know, vengeful as a judge, right? Where it's like, I hate criminals and I think they should all just go to the guillotine or whatever.
The police captain has more hate in his heart.
Right. Then like the Horla attaching to him might make some sense. What the Horla seems to want to do is force Cordier to do murders. But like, why? What is it proving about the nature of good and evil by doing that? Because sometimes it seems like it wants to try and convince him to do the murders on his own, like sort of a Iago Othello kind of thing, where it's like, oh, well, you have to kill Odette because she's just a gold digger and she doesn't really love you. Or you have to kill Paul because he's going to go to the police and you'll be found out. Or you have to kill the gallery owner's daughter because like she's going to go to the police or whatever. But then when push comes to shove, that's not what happens. It directly possesses him, and then he does the murders. So if it had to possess him to get it to do it, what does that prove? Like, you're not corrupting someone if you had to, like, take over their body to make them do the thing. And furthermore, because it has such definite physical form, it doesn't need Cordier to do
pick
anything.
up a knife and do a thing.
Like, if the Horla wants someone dead, the Horla can pick up a knife and kill them. Like, we see it try to, like, knock a vase over onto, like, Paul's head at one point. Like, it can truly just do anything itself. So what does it want? And based on the story's events, rather than what the Horla says, I would say that it should be feeding off of suffering. Like the suffering of a good man forced to kill innocent people, right? Like, that would make more sense, because the Horla seems to be, like, sadistic in that way.
Yeah.
And because of that, despite the fact that in the movie itself, the Horla describes itself as, like, a race of people. Like, they are another sentient race that dwells alongside humankind on the earth, but they live on, like, a different plane of existence, and they can only enter the material plane when someone's, like, violent or hateful. So that's a very, like, not quite science fiction, but, like, definitely, like, fantasy sort of explanation.
Like speculative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of how Kent has written the Horla in his script, its role and what it does and its motivations are basically just a traditional medieval Christian devil.
Yeah.
It is,
especially with the crucifix issue.
Yeah, like, it's here to tempt a man to do evil, or barring that, force a man to do evil, right? It's the old, like, the devil made me do it kind of thing. You know, yeah, it's repulsed by the cross and all this stuff. None of this really comes together to make a lot of sense, because on paper, if I was to talk about what the horror is in this idea, in this concept, it's the possession horror of being forced to do things by a will that's not your own. Like, it's really horrific to think of, like, your hands moving without you telling them to, and picking up a knife and, like, stabbing the woman you love and you can't do anything about it. Like, that's very horrific. Mm-hmm. But the movie misses even that, because Cordier isn't conscious during the two scenes in this movie where that actually happens, both of which are in the back half of the movie, and only one of which results in a successful murder. Because of that, because he doesn't remember, he wakes up and doesn't remember, like, he's a werewolf or something, there isn't really that horror here. Like, it doesn't work as well as it could. You know, after he does the thing with Odette's head in the clay, like I said earlier, that it feels like the movie's about to kick into high gear, and it just doesn't. Mm-hmm. Again, I think you pointed this out too. Like, if the Horla is here to feed on hate or make an innocent man do evil or something like that, you'd think that it would be trying to get Cordier to do things he would never have otherwise done.
Yeah.
But aside from killing Odette, all the other people the Horla tries to get him to murder are, like, people he would have a motive for if this was just a normal melodrama. Like you said, they aren't random.
Yeah, and the Horla is actually underlining, as you said, the motivation for why you should kill them.
Which, like, then that doesn't make sense with Odette. Like, the Odette murder is like, I'm going to force you to kill this woman you love, something that is totally out of character for you. But the others are like, oh, we need to cover this up, or, you know, this and that. Like, is the Horla, like, an accessory to murder? Or, like, what's the deal here?
You have to cover up these crimes, otherwise I'll go to Horla jail.
Right. Like, so it's just like, it's such a fucking mess, because the screenwriter took a very simple idea in the short story, and then clearly they wanted it to be this, like, oh, it possesses him and makes him do murders he doesn't want to do, which is not really in the short story, but it's kind of a natural thought to have reading the short story. But then from there, it's like the writer couldn't decide what he wanted the Horla to be.
Yeah.
It's sort of as if, like, you took, like, a medieval Christian monk, okay? and you were like, I want you to write a science fiction story about space aliens coming to Earth. And then the monk was like, well, I don't really know what aliens are, but I know what demons are. So I'm just going to write this alien like it's a demon. Like, that's kind of what it feels like happened here in a way.
Yeah, honestly, like watching this, it made me wonder how much Robert Bloch's own thing about Jack the Ripper was somehow circling back around to rip off this short story, even as he rips off himself time and time again.
Well,
but it's also like not no shade to the original author, but it's not a hugely original idea, right? Like I'm possessed by some other being to do evil.
Yeah, it's the devil made me do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's all it is. And that's kind of not what the short story is. Like, the short story is like, stuff is happening around me that I can't explain. I don't know if it's me and I'm crazy, or if there's an invisible being living in my house that's making me feel exhausted constantly. And it's like, or yeah, maybe you're just sleepwalking, dude. Maybe you have undiagnosed mental illness. And he's like, well, I'm going to burn my house down with my servants inside about it. Oh, that's awful. Yeah, I feel terrible. I'll kill myself. Like, it's a story about like the horrors of not being able to trust yourself.
Yeah.
Right? The movie is written as if it has something to say about good and evil and hatred and the criminal mind and like why men do evil and how we need to like understand the criminal mind and how hatred is evil and what the nature of these things are. But it never really comes together into like a coherent thesis.
Yeah.
Like, it's written as if it's trying to say something, but I don't know what the fuck it's trying to say. Like, the most coherent it gets is that idea at the end that the Horla are the cause of all evil, which just seems to let everyone off the hook for every bad thing that ever happened, which makes it like a shitty idea.
Yeah, little rough coming in here in 1963.
Yeah. I honestly, the last thing I have to say about this movie is, if you want to see this idea done right in a way that is like logically coherent, has like effective horror, has like effective drama, watch Wolf in the Fold, the original Star Trek episode where Jack the Ripper's an incorporeal being that has to possess people to do murder because it feeds on hate and fear. Like, it's you bring up like how close it is to this. Like, did Robert Bloch see this movie and rip it off or whatever?
No, I mean like read the story.
Sure. But I think like the most striking thing to me was just that because I've seen Wolf in the Fold, I can directly compare this movie against a version of this story that does everything right. Like, as far as original Star Trek episodes go, you know, it's a little bit on the goofier side. Like, it's, you know, hey, what if Jack the Ripper was an incorporeal alien? But in terms of like Jack the Ripper's motivations making sense, why it does things the way it does things, the horror of having committed awful acts with no control over yourself, like all of that shit works and makes sense in that episode. So like,
and it comes in at like what, 45 minutes?
45 minutes, and like Scotty's the main character, and that almost never happens. I think there's like 2 episodes in 79 where Scotty's the main character.
Yeah.
So yeah, just go watch that.
Yeah, just go watch that. Well, let's move on to ranking.
Absolutely.
I will call out some quick waypoints here. So LeBorg's highest ranking movie is The Black Sleep at 113, and his lowest ranking movie is The Mummy's Ghost at 266.
I have a very big range, so I'm really hoping you have a smaller range that's inside of mine so that this will be easy.
Yeah, I would say I have a smallish range, so why don't you go first?
So, in terms of like tone, this movie ended up making me think about Phantom of the Rue Morgue from 1954 a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You know, another Price movie set in France, color, has kind of a mix of like romance and horror, has like an art world sort of connection in it, is based on like the vibe of 19th century short stories. That movie's at 184. It's right above Murders in the Rue Morgue at 185. Below that is My World Dies Screaming, which is kind of a rad movie, even if it's not very good. So I saw The Killer Shrews at 187, which I know you have some affection for. And I thought, okay, that's maybe the highest this can go. Let's start looking below. And I kept looking because I was looking for like, what is this movie definitely better than, right? So I ended up looking all the way down to 289 at 3 Cases of Murder. And the reason I stopped there was my memory about how 3 Cases of Murder was too polite to be scary. And this movie is very like old fashioned. It's got only one murder in the whole movie. A lot of the movie's like romance, melodrama stuff. It really seems reluctant to be a horror movie, but when it is a horror movie, it realizes that the year is 1963 and it needs to like really go for it. And I think that puts it above 3 Cases of Murder, which never manages to like make that commitment. So my range here is 187 to 288, which is like, that's a big range. I need some help.
Absolutely. I think I can help us out here. So I gave the like waypoints of LeBorg's other movies. I didn't find it particularly helpful. So then I looked at what is right smack dab in the middle of the list.
Okay.
And that's 164, The Man Who Turned to Stone. And I was like, okay, let's just keep looking down from here.
Sure.
I also came to right around The Killer Shrews. I didn't draw these connections that you did with Phantom of the Rue Morgue. But I was like, I would much rather watch Killer Shrews than this movie. So let's keep looking down. And I actually wound up all the way down to 266 Voodoo Island. Voodoo Island is a whatever of a movie.
Sure.
I can at least say that the Horla is a movie. I think that like they've really put something together here. Yes, the script sucks and doesn't quite make sense, but every other piece, like people are working well together.
That's true. The production is good.
Yeah. So looking above Voodoo Island, I came to Circus of Horrors at 254, which was boring. So I was like, okay, I think that right above that is The Invisible Ray. That's definitely more exciting.
Yeah.
So I was like,
it's got a laser in it.
Yeah. It's invisible too.
Yes.
So I made Circus of Horrors my ceiling. And that basically means that my range is from Circus of Horrors down to Voodoo Island. I did look a little lower, and Werewolf of London is down here at 269.
Yeah.
So that one's also boring. So that's basically my range here of about 12 or 13 movies here.
Yeah, my difficulty became like I saw Werewolf of London and I was like, is Werewolf of London better than this? And like, then I started seeing like, is The Golem better than this? Is Song at Midnight better than this? Like I started really like that. And that's how I ended up like way lower, even
That's
though like
fair.
there is some trash, like Return of the Ape Man, The Monster Maker, like these are bad movies. Can you, at 265, The Dead One, 1961, I don't have any memory of this movie whatsoever. Can we refresh ourselves on what this is?
So I did look it up when I was looking at my ranking. That is, you remember it was like really low budget and it's set in like Louisiana in New Orleans, right? Because they go to Bourbon Street.
It's the one where they have to walk between the house and like the church over and over again in the movie to do zombie rituals.
Yeah.
And then it ends with
the
like
white woman is like the voodoo priest and she brings back her brother,
right,
or her
and
cousin or something.
Yeah, and the family had slaves and it's all very okay. No, this is worse than that. Dead One's better. Is what I'm saying. It's like actually talking about stuff. It like not very good, but it has a fucking point of view. If that's the case, I think this is going to go at 266 because I do see your point about this being more of a real movie than Voodoo Island. So that's where I think it should go.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Entering the list at the new number 266 is Diary of a Madman, which, by the way, title, not accurate. He wasn't mad. It's very clear that he wasn't, which is part of the problem with the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, Diary of a Madman now at 266. I'm really curious now about like the French movie in 2 years, or
like 3 years. I think it's 66.
66, yeah. That'll be interesting to compare.
For sure. Folks, if you would like to see the list and the other episodes that we have mentioned today, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.com. There you can find links to the other episodes that we have mentioned, as well as our appeals box. If you would like to contest this or any other ranking, if you want to give justice to LeBorg, drop us a line through our Ask box on Tumblr. You can reach out over email at screamscenepodcast@gmail.com or over Patreon or Blue Sky.
Scream Scene updates every other Wednesday on SoundCloud and is available through most big podcast services. If you want to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to our RSS feed. If you want to help the show out, tell a friend about it, share it online, listen to episodes, over again. If you really liked one, listen to it a second time if you got a long drive.
The Horla compels you.
Right.
Wait, that makes it sound like we feed on their suffering of listening to our voices.
Listen, the Horla works in mysterious ways.
I see.
If you really like the show, we would really appreciate it if you headed on over to patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast, where you can kick in as little as $1 a month to become a patron of the night. There's also a $5 and $10 level that gets you access to a wealth of bonus content we've produced over the years. We would really appreciate it if you are able to help support us financially, because man, that inflation's coming for everybody, huh? But we totally understand also if you can't. To everyone who does support us every month on Patreon, we are so grateful for all of that support. And if you want to be like those people, you can join them at patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast.
So, Ben, what are we watching next week?
Next week, Sarah, we are watching House of the Damned, a movie I've never heard of and don't really know anything about. My sense of it is that it's an old dark house type movie, and that a couple on their wedding anniversary has to spend the night in a haunted house.
Okay. Too bad we didn't do that. We just went to a mountain town.
That's right.
Well, we will see you then, creatures of the night.
Bye.
Bye.